All right, family, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. We are live. Thank you for joining us on another Monday at 5 o'clock. You are at the right spot. We are one man down. Face of the franchise so far is not able to join us. Hopefully, he'll put on his Superman cape and join us a little bit later. But we do have the most esteemed guest. You all remember when we were in New York, and we're not in New York, but talking to the good, fine, and I would say New York's finest, New York City educators. We have two of them again joining us, Miss Ilona and Miss Tanesha from New York City. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we do apologize not only to you, but to our family who certainly, sure of you, most of you tuned in at 5. We've had some technical snafu, so please forgive us. But you know, this is COVID, and a lot of folks are dealing with the same things every day. So I'm sure you understand. So welcome you all. Our connection question is, would you rather be slightly late or super early? Slightly late or super early? Let me see. Eeny, meeny, miny. Let's see. Miss Tanesha, what say you? You are muted.
I say, hi, hello everyone. I'm Tanesha, and I say I'd rather be super early.
Super early. Okay. Miss Ilona?
Hey folks, really excited to be here, especially with the incredible parent advocate, Miss Tanesha Grant. And I would say late. I would like to say early, but if I'm being real, time and I are not friends. So I am chronically late, unfortunately.
Well, you know, the great thing is that this is a would you rather, not what do you actually do, because I myself love to be super early, but it doesn't always shake out that way. So family, we are still looking for you to join us in the live chat. Put your answers right on in. We're welcoming your questions and your comments. This will be a little bit of an abbreviated show, but we're going to try to really talk to our faithful two educators here and see exactly what's happening in New York City, which is, you know, one of the cities we've been near and dear to as we've been comparing Baltimore City's woes and trials with COVID-19 and its effect, and other cities as well. And forgive me, Ms. Tanesha is a parent, and I would say she's still an educator because the parent is the first teacher, especially the mother is the first teacher of the child. But forgive me for saying that. I'm sure you're going to drop some nuggets of wisdom that we will be enlightened by Ms. Tanesha. Let's start with the school aspect. Lana, tell us what's going on as an educator, as you see it from your perspective in New York.
So New York, unlike Baltimore, started off with this hybrid model. So parents were able to opt into in-person learning or for fully remote, where students would come in once or twice a week. And since we started school, it's been chaotic. That's the word I have. Over the summer, and you know, this was reminiscent of what happened in the spring when we finally did close our schools in New York City. There's just been a real lack of transparency with the mayor, with the Department of Education, and with our own union leadership, the teachers, the United Federation of Teachers. And so it's, you know, we weren't included in the decision making. We really weren't a part of the process. And since then, when decisions do come out, it's always very last minute. And it's very hard to tell what the impetus or the reasons why decisions are made. You know, we're still struggling. Students are coming in, but everything, whether they're in person or remote, you know, 90% of kids are remote on a given day because they're only going in these very small groups if they chose to. And so a lot of their learning is still online, is still virtual. it's been frustrating because we spent so much time, energy, resources on thinking about the in-person portion, but all of the learning is happening online. And so now teachers, educators, like school communities in general, have been kind of left to fend for themselves over what learning online looks like, and what it could look like. And sadly, we just weren't given the time and the resources to really make this as equitable and as, you know, fully educational as possible. And teachers, students, parents, they're struggling.
Thank you for that. And I'm sure that our audience wants to know, I definitely want to know, what does a day look like now? You know, when you're talking about a hybrid model, when students are actually in school, what is it? Can you paint us a picture of that?
Yeah, I sure can. So when students, on a given day, there's about 15 students per grade. So I work at a 6 through 12 in the Soundview neighborhood of the Bronx. And we did a lot of outreach over the summer to try and share what the realities of in-person learning would look like with parents and families and caregivers. And as a result, the majority of our families chose fully remote. And so that meant that the small portion of students going into the building, they have to fill out a health screening form, have a temperature check, and then they have to wear masks. And they have to bring their own masks because the city did not provide enough PPE for both students and staff. And so if they don't have a mask, we're still at a point where we have additional PPE and we can give a student a mask. But I am afraid that eventually that will run out and students will be turned away. Once they enter the school, they go to one classroom with their quote unquote pod, their small group, and they don't leave that classroom the entire day. They stay in one classroom. And that's really to like minimize the risk of exposure, the risk of like transmission from just moving around the building and coming into contact with more people. But it is also very isolating and claustrophobic. So teachers will rotate in and out of those classrooms. But as I was explaining, because students are just coming in once or twice a week for in-person, all of their learning to try and make it as seamless as possible is still online. So they'll get into their classroom, they may eat breakfast and remove their masks for a little bit, and then they have to put them back on. And then they log on to their classes and they follow their class schedule from Zoom to Zoom online. And they're, you know, distanced, so the desks are very far apart. You know, we were just talking about internet issues. With that many people on the school's internet, it's constantly lagging and glitching. Students have to bring their own laptops into the building. So today a student forgot his laptop, which meant that he had to spend the entire day doing these classes on his phone because they didn't want to provide another laptop because, again, this fear around the risk of transmission and surface transmission. We are fortunate as a school to have been able to provide laptops for every student, but that's not the case for each school. There are schools in the Bronx where initially the Department of Education was delivering, and Tanesha will talk more about this like really crappy iPads. I mean, the fact that they were iPads and not laptops is wild. But they stopped doing that. And they've now told schools that it's up to individual schools to budget to give students laptops. This is during a time where our budgets are being cut. They were already cut by $1 billion at the start of the summer. So there are schools who've had to lay off or excess teachers. They don't lay them off, they excess them. But to ask schools now to put aside a part of their already small, not enough budget to now buy additional laptops for students because that's where the learning is happening, is just another layer of how frustrating this whole process has been.
Wow, wow. And Tanesha, you are the CEO of Parents Supporting Parents there in New York, amongst some other titles. Tell us a little bit about that, and then give us your perspective of you know, how you're making sense, if there's sense to be made of what we're hearing about this hybrid process or chaos as Ms. Ilona describes. You muted, Ms. Tanesha.
Hey everyone, I'm Tanesha. I wear a lot of hats, but at the end of the day, I'm a parent that just wants the best for my kids and for kids that look like my kids. And being a foster child, I know how the school system and how the school to prison pipeline works because I was one of those children, and I know it's something that you live with for the rest of your life. So in my work, I try to do everything that I can to help parents to help their kids to get the things that they need. And this education system is unreal. And when I say it's unreal, I mean it's unrealistic to try to teach the way that they are teaching. I don't understand why the higher ups get paid all of this money because I live in a 2-bedroom apartment and I would be what they consider low income. And I took the initiative myself, me and I'm part of my organization and Pamela Stewart to start a fund to buy our own kids laptops from the community because we trying to understand how the DOE spent almost $1 billion on broken iPads and made deals with supposedly the internet companies, but yet our kids don't have hotspots. My daughter was on in one of her classes today, and I heard one of her classmates talking about how he can't get on, how his hotspot is not working, how it's not working on the DOE computer that he was given. It just shows the inequities, right? Because let's be real, white children are not going through this. It's Black and brown children in my neighborhood. So what I do is I hold city officials accountable. I hold the elected accountable. I go to press conferences. I say at press conferences, y'all keep talking about how they holding you up with all of this red tape or whatever you want to call it. And you guys are supposed to be for the people. You guys make a lot of money. Donate if you really care about the kids in our community, because watching you over and over and over again talk about it at a press conference, you're not doing anything. We need action. We're tired of the lip service. We have been getting lip service for too many years as Black people, and I'm unapologetically talking about Black people because it seems to be a problem when Black people come together and want to do something for Black people and create community. I'm not trying to hear that. I care about my people, and my people have been disproportionately brutalized in this country that our ancestors built. So I'm past the community is going to do it for themselves, and we're really going to change things.
Thank you, Ms. Tanesha. Now, I was gonna, in the middle of your salvo there, I was gonna do our sign for nuggets of wisdom. I didn't want to do that while you were speaking and scare you all off, but we do this when we hear nuggets. This is what we do on Parent Power Hour. But Tanesha, let me stay with you for a moment and ask you, what's the rationale? Ms. Ilona saying that the students are coming into the building. They're sitting, and this is unheard of to me. They're coming into the building, they're distanced, they're masked up, but they're getting online. They're not really receiving any kind of direct instruction from the person, from the teacher there. They're there just to be online, which is something that they could do safely at home. Can you make some sense of this?
Yeah, it's for the economy. They want the economy. We make this city run. The people who work in this city make this city run. They need people to go back to work. It's not about our children. It's not about our children's education, because our children wasn't getting education before COVID. Like I said, I have to hold, I hold everybody accountable, including myself. I should not have been sending my children to school before COVID because it was not adequate for my children before. Our schools are crumbling. Our schools are starved. And then during a pandemic, you tell us that you're taking more money from our schools. And then you say, well, we know disproportionately Black and brown people are dying from COVID. We know disproportionately Black children don't have access to technology and Wi-Fi or internet. And then y'all turn around and do nothing about it. Nothing. You tell me that there's no money. We live in the richest city in the world. We're the only city that have a billionaires row. I just did a 7-hour march the other day where we marched to Jeff Bezos' house. I've been to Jeff Bezos' house in New York. I've been to Jeff Bezos' house in Washington. Because how much money do you need? We have 115 billionaires that live in New York. And I pay more taxes than they do.
Wow.
This is clearly white supremacy. This is clearly the plan. And it has to stop. Period.
Nuggets, nothing to add. Thank you. So I'm terrible at this, family. Please be patient. You know, our guy, the face of the franchise, Tyrone, normally handles this. Our producer, Rebecca, is working hard to get your questions in on the chat. I'm going to salute and shout out Joanne, Michael, and Yaja. Thank y'all so much for joining us. Please share you all and let everybody know that the podcast is going on. We have 2 of New York City's finest, 1 parent, 1 educator. Thank y'all for chipping in or chiming in, I should say. Michael and Yaja want to be super early. Love that. Lots of heart on what you all are saying. Lots of love. And yes, nuggets from Yaja and Yvette Reed, broken heart emoji, talking about, empathizing with what you all are going through in New York. And just anecdotally, it sounds worse in mass than what we're experiencing in Baltimore. I know there was, after a lot of push, there was a concerted effort by the district to try to get every child with a laptop, and now they're doing desktops. Not that they've done it perfectly, but there has been a loud, outcry. And so to that point, Ilona, tell us about Teachers Unite and tell us what kind of strategies are you using to advocate for parents, for other teachers, of course, and for students during this time.
So I don't know why I agreed to follow Tanesha. I can't ever follow Tanesha. But I mean, Tanesha just like highlighted, I mean, this is how the system was designed to work. And when I say the system, I mean, there are numerous systems, but really the public education system. And that pre-COVID, this pandemic, our schools were just underfunded. And when I say our schools, I mean, schools in neighborhoods that have been historically marginalized and redlined. So essentially our Black and Latinx communities. And so even pre-COVID, you had school buildings that are 100 years old without running water, without, heating or air conditioning in the summer, with lead in the water, and just missing huge parts of their budget because of the way schools are financed here in New York State. It's a lot around local property taxes, parent-teacher associations raising money. And so even my school before the pandemic was $1 million short. So then during the pandemic, right, it's just amplified and magnified. And so it's just been, parents in my community, we were like really badly hit by COVID. It's a lot of our quote unquote essential workers, whatever that means, who are, out working still as the virus has continued to, rage through our communities. And so it really is this like incredible choice within not only a white supremacist, but a capitalist system where you have to choose between your physical and your economic survival, where they're really placing profits over people. And so now the school reopening is really along those lines too, right? Like parents who, you know, are trying to have a job, you know, are faced with the tough choice of sending their kids in rather than having the state, which regardless of federal aid, if they were to tax the millionaires and the billionaires in this state, there's 118. I actually think during the pandemic, it went up to 120. So that just shows you people continue to make a profit during this pandemic. If they were to tax them, we would have the resources to fund our schools, to provide paid parental leave so parents could actually stay home with their kids and make this remote learning more of a reality, to extend unemployment benefits, right? Because that's, you know, slowly started to really shrivel up. The same thing with rent, to stop rent, to cancel rent, to stop evictions, and to provide every child with a laptop, free Wi-Fi and broadband. Like, it's just wild that we're in the quote unquote richest nation in the world. And there are large segments of our population here in just New York City that don't have those basic necessities. And they are basic necessities now for learning. And so I realize I went on a slight rant here and I'm forgetting the initial question, but a lot of it has to go with making sure that we secure the funds that we're entitled to so that we can actually create the schools that we're entitled to. And there was a moment, you know, as we were in the midst of the pandemic, that I was really hopeful. I know my own school community like really took a moment to pause and reflect and really consider, like, how are we doing schooling? I know Tanesha was talking about like schools weren't necessarily educating kids prior to the pandemic. So we took a moment to reflect, like, how are we teaching? What are we teaching? Are we just doing this because of standardized exams or, you know, out of habit, out of being conditioned in a white supremacist world? Or are we really doing it because we're responding to the needs of our community? And we recognized there was a lot of stuff that we were doing just because that's how it had been, and started to really reflect on the structures and the systems in place to make sure we were responsive to our community. And I really had been hopeful that that would happen citywide, statewide, nationwide. And it seems, again, like this capitalist machine, like just trying to profit off of disaster. Like, we've now are rushing back to quote unquote normal, when normal wasn't serving, you know, majority of our population nationwide. And when I say our population, I really mean our Black, our Indigenous, our Latinx brothers and sisters. And it just really concerns me that it feels like we're just moving back into that direction, and we're not actually dismantling some of these systems and structures that don't serve us and that actually undermine schooling, and our public education system.
Nuggets galore. Tanesha, before we go to you, this is for you, Ilona. Yaja appreciates Ilona. Your knowledge and input is valued here. So shout outs to you. And that's from Yaja, Ilona. Tanesha, Ilona just spoke about the funding question. Can you tell us about how you are handling funding right now? You mentioned some fundraisers you've been doing for students to have laptops. Is there any more? I'm sure there are more things that you're involved with. Can you tell us about those? Got to unmute yourself.
The state of New York owes our public schools $4 billion. They have owed our public schools $4 billion for as long as Governor Cuomo has been in office. Instead of Governor Cuomo taxing the rich and doing what he needs to do to get the money to the public schools, instead he supports the billionaires. So that's a fight that I've been fighting for 5 years to get those funds. But in the meantime, we're just doing it the grassroots way. I tell everybody, like, you donate to charities, but that money never sees the people on the ground. Give the money to the people that's on the ground, that's doing the work. We have raised $15,000 to buy Black children laptops. And we have brought 20 iPads. No, our kids need laptops. Technology is an essential item to have. Pushing culturally responsive education, where you teach the child about their culture, pushing all this whiteness that is so wrapped up in our education system out of it. All of these lies that they teach our babies and make them think that our ancestors weren't anything before, but they became enslaved people and built this country. So I work on things like that. I work with lead admin for Moms United for Black Lives. It used to be the Wall of Moms. So I basically lead over 1,800 white women and how to use their white privilege and, understand their bias and their microaggressions and the things that have just been built into them by this country, because they have been harmed too. But nobody's been harmed as much as as Black people have been harmed in this country. We're working on who the next mayor should be. The next mayor should be somebody from the neighborhoods, somebody that's been out here working in the community, somebody that's saying defund the police. That is one of our objectives. Getting this money out of the police budget is 11% of the city budget of this budget. 11%. They have money in there just in case they shoot a Black person, to pay a Black person's family off. They are trying to lay off 22,000 workers, but yet they're hiring more police officers. It's so intersectional with all the racism that happens, and it's just 2020. I mean, it's 2020 racism. They just do it in a different way, but it's the same thing. The voting suppression. It's the same thing as when they tried to make our elders and our ancestors take dumb tests to vote. You have them waiting in line for 11 hours to vote. Nothing has really changed in this country. And I think COVID just woke people up to, you not so far from us. You are in the same boat, because they will throw you away just as easily as they try to throw Black people away in this country. So I build with teachers, I build with parents, I build with students. We all have to come together and unify and take care of each other and take care of our community, because they're not going to do it. They have shown us with their actions, they're not going to do it unless we make them do it. And that's by doing it ourselves first.
Right. Thank you for those nuggets. We have some people chiming in. Thank you all, family. Let's see, Ilona, this might fall to you first. I wonder what happens if someone shows up with symptoms in a New York school. Have the protocols been clear? Also, how are teachers and parents together in fighting for the needed resources?
So listening to Tanesha, it also reminded me of what you had asked prior. So Teachers Unite is one coalition group that both Tanesha and I are a part of, where it brings teachers, parents, young people together in spaces to really discuss, engage, and really ultimately look at restorative transformative justice and how to get cops out of schools and really fund counselors. And so that's one avenue where we've been building coalition. Again, going back to the pandemic, there was a moment with, the protests around the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and the just countless other folks who have been brutalized and murdered, other Black folks at the hands of police and our government, our state. Where it seemed like the New York City DOE was going to make some changes. So one was the school safety officers They were going to move them from NYPD's jurisdiction to the Department of Education. And then the next step was to really think through, like, what is that role? Is there a way to transition out of having school safety and maybe training folks to become counselors instead, or social workers? Now there's very little momentum around that, precisely because this whole of how are we going to accommodate hybrid learning and in-person learning in schools has really become front and center. The other group that I want to shout out, I'm wearing my shirt right now. I know Baltimore has its own, so I'm part of the movement of rank and file educators, which is the social justice caucus in our teachers union. I know Baltimore has Be More, and I think they've actually taken over union leadership. Sadly, we are not there yet, but hopefully soon. And so that group, we've really been working hard around our health justice agenda. So really thinking through what transformative schooling could look like that really centers the needs of those who have been, historically marginalized, or our BIPOC communities, and really centering healing centered. Like, what would it be to really heal some of the harms around that, some of the harms of institutional and systemic racism? And so that's been another space where we've been able to build coalition and to organize around things like taxing the rich, around culturally responsive education, et cetera. Now, to get to the question around contact and tracing, so public education, not nearly funded enough. Healthcare, the exact same thing. Right now, they are closing public hospitals in New York during a pandemic, which is just wild. We don't have the infrastructure for robust contact testing and tracing. And so one of the things that our union leadership here agreed to, which was just wild, was that we would not mandate testing. Instead, what we would do is every month they would take a random sample, 10% of an entire school building, and test those people to see what came up. Then once we started school, they backwalked on that, and they said, if students and their families agreed to it, if they signed a permission slip, then they would offer random testing to them. If not, then they did not have to get tested. Now, what this also means is that the onus is really on individual families, which is not fair for them to have to make that choice. Especially, I work in a community where I would say maybe 40–50% of our families are undocumented and are really fearful around any, and rightfully so, interactions with institutions, systems like contact tracing. And so when given the choice to test or not, a lot of them may not choose that because they're very fearful of the ramifications. We have not done a good job in informing families of what testing and contact tracing really means. And we do have kids come in and present symptoms. And let me just tell y'all a story. This poor baby came in, 6th grader, right? Her first time in the building. She's a 6th grader. She's new to the school. She comes in, they take her temperature, everything's fine. And then around lunch, she starts to feel really sick, goes to the bathroom, is in the bathroom for like an hour vomiting. The teacher goes to find her, they take her temperature, and she's got a 100-degree fever. Then everyone's in a heightened state of fear. So they go, and one person has to escort this kid down to a quote unquote isolation room, where the person in the isolation room is in like full on hazmat gear, like the mask, the shield, the gloves, and sits with this kid until a caregiver can come pick her up. Then the nurse comes up. The nurse is completely clothed, only to ask her what her symptoms are, to be like, yeah, that sounds like you might have COVID. Caregiver comes, caregiver doesn't speak English, so translating the whole process to them, being like, you should probably go get tested to see if this is COVID or if it's just something else. The kid leaves, but after that, unless we get a positive COVID test sent from the hospital, all of the teachers there, all of the kids there, they don't have to quarantine. They don't have to get tested. the building is still open. And so again, I say the onus is really put on individuals and families versus having a robust system and structure to, to make sure folks are getting tested and are getting the treatment that they need to survive this virus, to survive this disease. And so it's just very haphazard, and she's still at home, but everyone else is just coming into the building as normal. And she has not gotten tested yet, and she probably won't. She's just waiting out the quarantine at home because she's really scared. She spent the rest of the day crying because it was such a traumatic experience.
Wow. Thank you for that. Those are the stories that we need to hear. And I really appreciate you sharing that firsthand, because Baltimore is on the cusp of making the exact same decision about doing a hybrid model. And I mean, they made the decision, but, they have not put it into practice. And so these are the types of things that unfortunately sounds like can't be mitigated, and we have to look forward to. Tanesha, I'm gonna give you the last word, but before I do, let me just thank everyone that's hanging with us, especially without the man of the hour, as always, Tyrone. We appreciate you all. Let's see some of the things here. Seems like Baltimore, New York City, and Baltimore could work together. I agree, we're really happy that we have this connection to show connecting our two cities. Are any schools in New York City doing project-based learning? That's from Kim Watkins. Someone says the DOE's Department of Education, I learned that last time, discussing high price purchase of 300,000 iPads, denied those 300,000 kids plus another 300,000 children the right to operational technology. Our kids needs keyboards and actual laptops, to Tanisha's point, and that's from Yaja. Thank you, Yaja. That is crazy about laying off people and hiring more police. And from Rebecca, our esteemed producer, letting us know that you ladies are receiving plenty of nuggets of wisdom and hearts and thumbs up. Another comment, what's the relationship, or question, what's the relationship between parents and teachers like? That's also from Yaja. And what the heck with the testing or lack thereof? And Yaja. Yaja, thank you. You are you're holding us up today on the comment and question line. Mostly thank you. And thank all of you for chiming in. I would like to, you all have kind of talked about that, because clearly we have an outstanding parent, leader, organizer, administrator, revolutionary in Tanesha here. And you, of course, being the advocate from the teacher's standpoint, it sounds like in the city, at least where you all are, the teachers and parents are working together. Definitely sounds like Tanesha has galvanized 1,800 moms, from what I recall her saying, to work on using their privilege, weaponizing their privilege, if you will, as a way to stoke equality where it certainly belongs, back with our young people, Black and brown young people there in New York City. I think Tanesha might be frozen. I'm not sure. Tanesha,
no, I'm not frozen.
Okay.
I'm not frozen. I'm here.
Okay, great. So what do you think? Last words, last comments. It sounded like you had addressed pretty much, from your leadership position, how well you all are doing as a coalition with moms, parents, and teachers. But I'll give you the floor for your last thoughts here.
Yeah, I'm a public speaker or truth teller, so I'm always going to tell the truth. So yes, the system has divided the parents, the teachers, and the students. And with this COVID-19, we have come together. But still, can you hear me? Because you're frozen.
I can hear you.
Frozen?
You're frozen, but we can hear you.
All right, but still we have work to do, because as a Black woman, there have been many things that I have said before COVID. When I knew that this was happening, when it was on TV, that this was, if this virus came to this country, it was going to be bad. We knew this. So we don't have leaders that are leading. But my point is, I'm tired of saying things and being out here and doing the work to have somebody white come behind me and co-opt it. That's a problem. This movement, this revolution, this liberation is about Black people, and it will center Black people. And if you don't center us, we will center ourselves. So yeah, I worked 3 times as hard to get the stuff that an average person with privilege would get. And I hold people accountable because it's a lot. People will disgrade your work and not even know that they're doing it. And so we just have to hold each other accountable. And we have, if we're saying that we're here to do the work, this is the work. All of this is the work. Working on yourself, that's the work. Understanding that this is a racist system, that's the work. Understanding that it's time for a Black agenda. It's time for Black people to be centered. That's the work, period.
Well, and on that, I have nothing further. Nothing further. I see what you mean, Ilona, about following Tanesha. I would like to say, okay, so someone's saying Miss Tanesha and Miss Fiona. I'm sure they mean Ilona. I know you get Fiona all the time. Please, please, please come back. Yes, we're going to make that happen. I do want to thank Yaja. I want to thank Kim Watkins. I want to thank, I saw Joanne, Michael, Yaja, Yvette Reed. Okay.
Kim Watkins. She's running for Manhattan Borough President.
Who was that? Say the name again, Tanesha.
Shout out to Kim Watkins. She's running for Manhattan Borough President. Hi, Kim. Thanks for joining.
Yes, Kim, thank you so much for joining and giving us that in the moment information about the DOE and their gross, looks like, misappropriation of those funds and that equipment. Thank you so much, Miss Ilona Nanay. Can't talk. Miss Ilona Nanay and Miss Tanesha Grant. I would like to say, again, two of New York's finest, continue to do what you do. I would personally say, this is my personal thing. My prayers are with you all being back in those buildings. I do pray for your protection, because I really can't honestly imagine having to endure that. You're literally your personal safety and the safety of those children. But continue to please fight, as I know that you will, and stand up for the voiceless there in New York City, and by extension, everywhere. Family, thank you so much. It is 6:06. I'm going to speak for Tyrone and say, join us anyway, even though he couldn't make it to the show today. Join us Thursday. Miss Ilona and Miss Tanesha, you are invited Thursday at 5 o'clock, Tyrone's house, virtually, of course, Tyrone's house. Come out, give us Miss Kim Watkins, Joanne, Michael. We want to see all of you all there. Who did I miss? Yaja. Come join us on Thursday as well to keep this conversation going. And as you know, very much, Tyrone will be leading in the way that he can with his style on Thursday's show, to continue to talk about these issues in the way that he can and only he does so well. We do appreciate you all, and really do shout out all of you all that were in the chat, pushing the show and propelling the show without our dear brother that could not join us. Thank you all. Be safe, stay safe. And remember, just like our guest said, we are still, I wouldn't even say in the middle of the pandemic. We don't know where the middle is, but the pandemic is still happening. Keep what is happening in New York City. This is actually this is a perfectly timely show to hear from these two fine folks, because this is what's next for us, you all, Baltimore City. So you heard the problems. We're not going to be able to escape those problems, even with all of the things that the city is or isn't providing. So keep that in mind. Thank you so much for joining us.
And let me just say one more thing. I'm sorry, but it's important. I just want to say there was a pandemic before the pandemic, and that pandemic was called racism. Okay. So if that was bad and this is worse, what do we have to look forward to? So we all have to do our part to make a better country for our children, to make sure that the country is still going to be here because climate change is real. Thanks.
We might as well say period because I don't have anything else to say, Tanesha.
Period.
Thank you, family. We will see y'all Thursday and or next Monday. Good night.